Hey guys, Mehrnoush here from Ross IELTS Academy. In this video, we want to see the correction of a writing that one of our candidates has sent us. This writing is a task 2 writing in IELTS exam. And the question type is advantages and disadvantages. One thing you should always remember in this question type is the paragraph structure, and then the expressions that you should use in each paragraph to talk about your explanations, the example, or even if you're asked to talk about your own opinion. The very first tip for you is to paraphrase the question statement in your introduction paragraph as the very first sentence of the paragraph. Then you have to plan the whole writing in this paragraph, the introduction paragraph, and talk about the details of advantages and disadvantages in the two body paragraphs. And finally, your conclusion paragraph that you just conclude everything, right? So this is the most important thing, the correct paragraph structure and the expressions that you should use to talk about your own, explanations and ideas. Now, let's watch this video to see what mistakes this candidate made that you should avoid. And to boost your own score in your writing in IELTS exam, you can also use our writing correction. Why not? Why only this candidate? So you can use our writing correction service visiting our website, which is www.rossielts.com. And we will give you the written and video feedback on your writing for you to just get to know about your mistakes and do better the next time. So if you're ready now, let's watch the video. So here we go. We have a task 2 writing here. Here's the question statement, and here's the question that you have to write about. Let's read to see what question type we're dealing with. So it says, social media is becoming increasingly popular amongst all age groups. However, sharing personal information on social media websites does have risks. Do the advantages of social media outweigh the disadvantages? So, this is an advantages and disadvantages question, but you shouldn't only mention the advantages and disadvantages because it is asking us, do the advantages that you want to mention outweigh the disadvantages that you are going to mention? So this is the question that we have to answer. Now we will talk about the paragraph structure for that. So first, let's start with your very first paragraph, which is your introduction paragraph. I should just give you this information that the words or phrases marked or highlighted in yellow are your grammatical mistakes. The ones in blue are your lexical resource or your vocabulary mistakes. And the red ones are the ones that I have added. Some are crossed out, some are removed like this. And the ones in pink are the explanation about that paragraph. So with this instruction, now it's more clear for you what we are doing and how we are giving the feedback on different criteria. To start your paragraph, you started with this sentence. This is your sentence. These days, our access to information is greater than it ever was thanks to the advent of internet, which makes our connection more convenient than before. I have crossed this sentence out and I say this is wrong due to a reason. Here. One thing you should know about IELTS Writing Task 2, all the question types, is that the very first sentence of your introduction paragraph should be the paraphrasing of the question statement. This question, this sentence actually. So it means that you should use synonyms to paraphrase, to rephrase this statement as the very first sentence of your introduction paragraph, no matter what question type you're dealing with. So I have added this sentence here to the beginning of your introduction paragraph. Here we go. The question statement says, social media is becoming increasingly popular amongst all age groups. However, sharing personal information on social media websites does have risks. Here's the paraphrasing. People from all age groups are showing more tendency towards social media, while, I'm showing contrast, while putting up the personal information on the online websites is not a safe option. So I used direct synonyms to paraphrase the question statement as the first sentence of my introduction paragraph. Now you are going on this way. You said there is a controversial around the usage of social media. Some thought it is very useful, and others believed it has many hazards. In this essay, I will examine both views and explain why, despite the drawbacks it could cause, I feel benefits surpass its demerits. Okay. So, okay, very well. So, the problem here is that after you paraphrase you paraphrase the question statement as the first sentence of your introduction paragraph, in the next sentence you have to give the answer to the question. It is asking, do the advantages of social media outweigh the disadvantages? What you should do is to name some advantages, some disadvantages, and directly state if the advantages outweigh the disadvantages, or if the disadvantages outweigh the advantages. So this is what you should say in the next sentence. This sentence of yours is okay. You're saying there is a controversial around the usage of social media, so there are like advantages and disadvantages. In the last sentence, you should have named those advantages. Okay, what are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? You just said, okay, there are some benefits and drawbacks, and I will talk about it in the text. No, you should name them in the introduction paragraph, then you should give more explanation about them in the body paragraphs. So that's the main problem you have here about the structure of your introduction paragraph. As you can see, I have also mentioned here that you should start the first sentence of your introduction paragraph by paraphrasing the question statement. I have added this one to the very first part of it. Then you should give the answer to the question. What is the question? You should mention the advantages and disadvantages of social media and say if one outweighs the other. Your second sentence is irrelevant. I mean, your very first sentence was irrelevant and I removed it. And in the next sentences, you are only mentioning that, okay, there are some pros and cons. There are some benefits and drawbacks, but you should name them and clearly state your idea on if one outweighs the other. So this is the structure in the first paragraph. Now, to talk about your grammatical and vocabulary mistakes, here you said there is a controversy about something. You don't need an adjective here, you need a noun here, and controversy is a noun. Some thought it is very useful. No, since you are generally talking about a fact, so it should be simple present, right? Some think it is very useful, and it in the middle of the sentence, I cannot be capital. It should be small. And others believed, again, this should be believed. It's a grammatical mistake because you are generally talking about a fact. It's about now, these days. And this essay, I will examine both views and explain why. After why, no comma is required. Why? Because this is just the rest of the same sentence and you shouldn't pause here. So I removed comma. That's about your vocabulary and grammar problems. And you should know one thing. If you have punctuation problems, then that would be your grammar. If you have spelling problem, then that would be your vocabulary. So pay attention to the colors. This was all about your introduction paragraph. And now to talk about your next paragraph, the first body paragraph. As this is an advantages and disadvantages question, and it's asking whether one outweighs the other one. In the introduction paragraph, you just mentioned the whole plan of what you want to talk about, naming the advantages and disadvantages, and very briefly saying if one outweighs the other. Now, in one of your body paragraphs, you should develop either your advantages or disadvantages. Like for example, in the first body paragraph, you explain more about advantages, and in the next body paragraph, this one, you should talk about the disadvantages, or we can talk about the disadvantages here and the advantages in the next body paragraph. It's up to you. Now let's see what you have done. You said, to begin with, despite the great advantages, online platforms which help us to keep abreast of local and global events, they also put our lives in risks. I would say that while I was reading this paragraph, I realized you want to talk about the disadvantages of social media. So you should start this paragraph with a very clear topic sentence showing that this paragraph is going to be about disadvantages, because it is a little vague. You should directly say, to talk about the disadvantages of the internet or of the social media, blah, blah, and then you go on. So make it very clear in the topic sentence, because topic sentence is what gives the general idea of the whole paragraph to the examiner. That's the problem with your topic sentence here. It is not clear that you want to talk about the disadvantages. You have to directly mention this word or its synonyms. Now the next sentence, you said, many unauthorized websites claim for personal information. They did not open until you provide them and give them access to everything, which may lead to many security problems. This is a very good explanation on one of the problems with the social media, with the internet. But the biggest problem here is that you hadn't mentioned that this one is about disadvantages, so that the examiner understands, okay, now this is the explanation sentence about the disadvantages. Now, you go on like this. Hackers, for example, can easily steal those personal information and track people and threaten their lives by this data they have. Hence, the less people use social media, the less attack like this could occur. Okay, so we talked about the first sentence, your topic sentence. So the next sentences should be the explanation about the disadvantages. Then you should have one sentence giving an example on disadvantages. And your final sentence should be your idea. In this kind of question, Amani, the first sentence of your body paragraph is the topic sentence, saying that I want to talk about disadvantages or I want to talk about advantages. Here, disadvantages. In the next sentence, you explain more about the disadvantages that you named, because you have to give more information about that, right? In the next sentence, you give an example. For example, in the University of Ottawa, blah, blah, blah. Talk about a research, talk about an example. And in the last sentence, because the question is asking, do the advantages of social media outweigh the disadvantages? Asking about your idea. So the last sentence of your body paragraph, you should say, if you think that now that you talked about the disadvantages, if you think that all these disadvantages outweigh the advantages or not. For example, you have mentioned the disadvantages, explanation, everything about that. And in the last sentence, when you are talking about your idea, you say, okay, I think I mentioned all these disadvantages, but I think that the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. So whatever idea you have, you should mention it as the last sentence of your body paragraph. Here, you're talking about the disadvantages. So this is about a structure. That was the main problem here, just like your introduction paragraph. Now to talk about your grammatical and vocabulary mistakes. Here, to begin with, despite, D is not capital, is small, despite. And to put our lives in risks, to put our lives in risk. When you want to start your explanation sentence, you should use some phrases like, this is to say that, in other words, what I mean is that. So use these expressions for this question type. This is to say that unauthorized websites claim for personal information, comma, they did not open until you provide them and give them access to everything, comma, which may lead, it's full of commas. Here, I have crossed out comma and added and. And they did not know, they do not. You're talking about a fact. They do not open until you provide them and give them access. Provide them is redundancy. You don't need to use that. Until you give them access to everything, comma, which may lead to many security problems. Good. Here's your example, but make sure to start your example sentence with this. You say, for example, for instance, comma, hackers can easily steal. All I want to say, Amani, is that if this is the explanation, make it clear, using the expressions for that. If this is your example sentence, then make it clear. Use the expressions when you want to use examples, when you want to give examples. If this is the topic sentence, make it very clear what idea you are talking about. Words have power in the writing, and you have to use them wisely. So, for example, then I have added 2 commas here because this is extra information. Hackers, for example, can easily steal those personal information. No, that's personal information. Information is uncountable. Comma, track people, because you're naming a group of things. You cannot say blah, blah, and blah, blah, and. So, blah, blah, comma, blah, blah, comma. Before the last one, you add and. Personal information, comma, track people, and threaten their lives by the data they have. The data, because we know what data we're talking about. Hence, the less people use social media, the less attack like this could be occurred. No, could occur, could happen. You don't need to change it to passive. So this is all about it. You have some explanation about the disadvantages. You should make your example more clear by using the correct expression and structure. And at the end, you should directly give your idea. For example, I think, I believe, in my opinion, which you haven't. Okay, now to talk about the next body paragraph. Good. In the first body paragraph, you talked about the disadvantages. So obviously, in the second body paragraph, you should be talking about the advantages of social media. And again, stating if the advantages that you are talking about outweighs the disadvantages. So it would be the topic sentence, explanation, example, and your idea about the advantages. Let's see what you have done. You said, on the other side, there are many reasons why the usage of digital platforms people has been increased in the last few decades. This is not a good topic sentence, because here you should directly say, clearly and directly say that, okay, the advantages of social media are something. Or in your own words, you should say that very clearly. But what you are doing is talking about the reasons why the usage of digital platforms has increased. The question has not asked you to talk about that. The question has been asking you to talk about the advantages of social media. That's all. So you're going off the topic here. Now, in your explanation, you said, okay, firstly, social media helps us to stay updated with the latest news. Most people depend more on online platforms for cutting-edge news rather than buying ordinary newspapers, because they are more convenient, more updated, and can easily be reached at any time. Great explanation. Your explanation is about the advantages, but the problem is that in the topic sentence, it was not clear that you want to talk about the advantages of social media. Now you go on like this. Moreover, social media helps people to communicate with each other without any effort or wasting any time. So this was your explanation. Now, thanks to internet, if you have a friend, so this is your example, but I have changed it and we will talk about it. If you have a friend at America, for instance, and you live in Egypt, you can communicate with him or her daily at any time. In the past, we do not have this prosperity. Hence, we all know how important of social media in our lives, but only when we use it carefully. So this was your example and more explanation about that example. I don't see anything about your idea on if you agree that the advantages that you mentioned outweigh the disadvantages that you had mentioned in the previous body paragraph. So now we go back to the topic sentence. Okay, we talked about the topic sentence. The explanation is about the advantages, but it was not clear in the topic sentence that you want to talk about this. And your example. Now to talk about your grammatical mistakes and vocabulary. On the other side, you'd better say on the other hand, there are many reasons there, it's not capital T, it's in the middle of your sentence and it's small t. There are many reasons why the usage of digital platforms has been increased. No, has increased, present perfect. You're talking about past and the result of that to present. If you want to use present perfect continuous, then has been increasing or has increased, present perfect. In the last few decades, spelling problem. Maybe you were typing very fast. Firstly, comma, social media helps us to stay updated with the latest news. Most people depend more on online platforms for cutting-edge news rather than buying ordinary newspapers because, once again, B is not capital, it's a small. They are more convenient, more updated, and can easily be reached at any time. You use very good vocabulary in this sentence. Moreover, social media helps people to communicate with each other without any effort or wasting any time. Here you're giving an example. As I told you, always make it clear what you want to talk about. Always make it clear if this is the explanation, or if this is the example, or if this is your idea. Use the correct expressions to clearly show that to the examiner. So you can say, for example, thanks to the internet, comma, if you have a friend in America, not at America. For instance, no need to for instance. If you have a friend in America and you live in Egypt, comma, after your if clause, you have a comma. Now this is your main clause. You can communicate with him or her daily at any time. Okay, full stop. Your sentence should not be very long. In the past, we did not have this prosperity. Hence, we all knew how important of social media in our lives, but only when we use it carefully. This sentence is very vague. It's not clear to understand. So you can say, hence, we will all get to know how important social media is in our lives, but only when we use it carefully. Here, you should have given me your idea about the advantages and if they outweigh the disadvantages, but I don't see it here. Now to talk about the last paragraph, your conclusion paragraph. Okay, in the conclusion paragraph in this question type, you should paraphrase the introduction, the plan of your whole essay, and once again, answer the question. The question was, do the advantages of social media outweigh the disadvantages? But it should be in like a wrap-up form. You just want to conclude and finish everything here. So you have said, in conclusion, there is no doubt that social media play a vital role in our lives, despite the implicit dangers of collecting data without online platforms. Communicating would not be as easy as it is. That is why I strongly believe their benefits overshadow their demerits. Okay. It was kind of a good conclusion because you mentioned the advantages that you had mentioned before, the disadvantages that you had mentioned before in the body paragraphs. But you should also briefly paraphrase the whole introduction again as the first sentence of this paragraph. And you have also mentioned your idea, which is a very good thing. So the question statement here should be paraphrased here, and also very briefly should be paraphrased here with your own words. Like in 3 sentences, you can finish your introduction paragraph. Sorry, your conclusion paragraph, and of course, introduction paragraph. Now to talk about your grammar and vocabulary mistakes. In conclusion, there is no doubt there, capital T, no, small t. There is no doubt that social media plays a vital role in our lives. Full stop. It shouldn't be very long. Despite, now we start a new sentence. Despite the implicit dangers of collecting data, not dangerous, dangers, without online platforms, comma, communicating would not be as easy as it is now. This is why I strongly believe their benefits overshadow. No, the correct word is outweigh. Because if you want to choose a synonym or a paraphrase form of the word, you should make sure that it is 100%. It 100% has the same definition as that word. Overshadow is not the direct synonym of outweigh. Overshadow their drawbacks. Drawback is the better word here. You can say advantages and disadvantages, pros and cons, benefits and drawbacks. These are very good words and they are safe words. Okay, so this is all about your writing. Your biggest problem was in the structure. I mean, the paragraph structure was mostly wrong, and that resulted in some coherence problem as well. About your word count, you had written 348 words, more than 250, so no problem with that. And now I want to talk about your score. In your task response, you got a 4. In your coherence and cohesion, you got another 4, because these two were your biggest problems here. In your lexical resource, you got a 6. And in your grammar, you got a 5. That would bring you an overall band score 5. So in your task response, you got a 4, which means that the biggest problem here is that you were asked a question, but you did not directly answer that question. The question was to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of social media. But in some paragraphs, you were talking about something else. So many ideas and many sentences were irrelevant to the exact question that you were asked. And also your position in the paragraphs and in the whole text was unclear. So once again, because you didn't know the structure of this question type and the expressions that you should have used. And because of all that, the ideas that you used were very difficult to identify. As I told you, it was in some parts it was confusing. It was not clear. Here, the sentences are not clear and some details are missed. And that's only because you didn't realize what exact structure you should use for this question type. So make sure to understand what question type you're dealing with. In your coherence and cohesion, you got another 4, which means that you presented the information and ideas, but your ideas were not organized and arranged coherently. It means that once again, because you didn't know what this question type is all about, you gave me some information, but the information were not relevant in the paragraphs and to the question that you were asked. And of course, you had paragraphing problems. Paragraph structure is also mentioned here. And we talked about it together. In your vocabulary, your lexical resource, you got a 6, which is a very good thing. And it shows that you were using adequate range of vocabulary. And there were some less common vocabulary, as I mentioned, for example, here. The digital platforms, the cutting-edge technology. So you were using some very good vocabulary to convey the meaning. But you had, at the same time, you had some inaccuracies. Some words were not correct. Like here, you should make sure to use the safe and 100% correct words as the synonyms, the direct synonyms of the words. And you had some spelling problems. Within the paragraph, the whole within the text, all the paragraphs. And your grammar, you got a 5. A 5 shows that you were using some structures, but the biggest problem that you had in your grammar is that you made frequent grammatical errors. Like some structures that you were using were really good ones. The tenses or the complex structures were good ones, but you made mistakes in almost all your sentences. Look at the sentences here. Here you had these problems. Once again, here in these punctuation and grammar problems. Again, here you see the yellow color. again here. So the structures you were using were sufficient, but because of many mistakes that you made, which caused some difficulty for the reader or for me as the examiner, so that's why you got a 5. If you just if you were just a bit more careful with your grammatical mistakes, you could easily get a 6 in grammar. So your overall band score would be a 5, and the biggest reason for that is because you didn't really understand the question type you're dealing with, and as a result, you used the wrong expressions or paragraph structure for that. See guys, avoiding the mistakes that this candidate made, you can of course get a better score in your own writing. And don't forget, you can always visit our website to use our writing correction service or our writing course. In the writing course, you will get to know all about the different question types, the paragraph structures, the expressions, and the practice files, which are included also in this course. And at the end, you will be ready to take your general module or the academic module because you know about all the different question types and different tasks of IELTS writing. Or you can use our writing correction service, which means that you send us your writing and you will get feedback and your own score and the strategies that you should use to get a better score the next time or on the test day. So thank you very much. You can always visit our website and our Instagram. See you next time and stay tuned.